way over the top, or did it like relate somewhere in between for your experience or those you heard of?
I hope it's exaggerated.
Well, I don't think like everyone's just like going around spiking LSD into the punch.
Hey, you over there.
Yeah?
Guess what?
What?
You wanna talk spooky stuff?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kay.
And I am Gabe.
You're a ghoul.
Sure am.
Wow, same.
What brings you here next to me?
I'm kinda over humanity.
Yeah, people are trash.
Just like our bodies.
You know there's a lot to say about how media is made.
Like there's a more to every story.
Exactly. It's fascinating. We could make a show.
A show?
And we'll let everybody know. Use our brains.
Brains.
No, not to eat. To educate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess you could say we're the ghouls next door. Oh, that's not gonna get old till it gets old. Hi, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Kat.
And we're
The
ghouls next door.
Yeah,
Talking about spooky stuff.
as we do.
Yes, we are the media analysis show from a horror lens where we explore the real life and real life influences behind our cinematic fears. That is the tagline we worked on.
You did it.
And we are in the midst of our horror movie musicals series, which has been so fun because, let me tell you, there are loose rules for what musicals are
what
and
they
what
are,
they
yeah.
should be and how they should operate and who should make them. All of those things.
Ultimately, there are no rules. Like
No
that
rules.
You would assume there'd be rules, but there's not.
No rules.
And it's not like a negative. It's not like a jab. It's just like, what a trip this has been. What a,
Yeah,
what
so
a journey.
far.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is like our third one. So this is our third one.
Yeah.
You probably just watched our Repo, the Genetic Opera, which was a fun time. And we're getting really weird. We're going to get very weird with this series because musicals are just inherently weird because you're singing your emotions and you just tell them flat out. It's like my
Yeah.
favorite parts of Shakespeare plays when like a character comes out and they're like, I'm going to sabotage the hero and I'm going to do this awful thing. Everyone sit back and watch. And then they like go off stage and then they do it. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, you did say.
It's like almost like listen to what people say when they say it to you.
Yes, listen to what people say. We are going to be talking about a really wild musical. When I Googled horror musicals, this came up, which is strange because it's not really a musical in a traditional sense. There's dancing and
Yeah.
there's dance numbers, and so there's music. And music is also plays a lot of point in making you feel really anxious and unsettled and stressed the whole time. So we'll be talking about CLIMAX, but it is focused on dancing and dance culture, the dance communities, some of the toxic parts of that. It's also loosely based off of a real life thing that happened that we can talk about too, and just all kinds of stuff that'll be really upsetting. But Kat and I aren't dancers.
Yeah, I don't know. I argue I am not a good dancer. I would say it goes as an extra step in the opposite direction of expertise, and that I'm bad at it, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you dislocate your limbs just by
Yeah.
walking.
Yeah.
Just by doing regular stuff like
And
walking
asthma.
downstairs.
So
And asthma.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I used to want to be a ballerina for like a minute. And my mom and family were like, no. You can't even walk. Like, you just trip over air and nothing is there.
I had the opposite problem, which is just very funny because my mom wanted me. I took ballet, and I was going through a weird like needy phase, and my mom couldn't come in the room with me, so I threw like a whole fit. I was like, I don't want to dance
Yeah,
if my
don't do
mom
that.
can't be here to dance too, so I don't want to do it. And then she just was like, all right, I guess we're not we're not doing it then. All right.
Yeah.
Because
they
money,
wouldn't take me to
you-
dance.
It's like, why
They
money?
tried karate once, but they never brought me to dance. I used to like try to do like twirls, and then I would like lose my balance and like hit a wall, and I'd fall on the ground, and I'd be like, ta-da! Emily's like, good job. That was great. That's all you could do right in here in the safety of this living room where no
Not
one
on
can
a stage
see you
in front
do
of
this.
others.
Yeah, no one else can see you do it.
Real good. Oh, it's not
so-
fake.
Not dancers. So it was completely new, this whole film. So we thought we would bring on a very special guest who I never would have imagined would be on the show because she's very adamantly against horror. And oftentimes, I am the one who's watching horror with her husband because she doesn't want to watch it. Or she gets dragged to horror things with us because she doesn't want to, but we do it anyway. But we really wanted to get some expertise into the to the dancing community. And so we are going to bring on Allie Gee. Hi.
Hey!
Welcome to our show.
Thanks!
Could you tell our guests a little bit about yourself and what you do so that they understand why we brought you here?
Yeah, sure. So I've been dancing practically my whole life, since I was 3. My parents put me into dance, and I started doing competitions. I did them when I was like 7 all the way through high school. Gained a lot of titles through that. Got a scholarship to the Boston Conservatory and went for dance studies. I got my BFA at BOCO, and then I went to New York. I lived there for 3 years freelancing and dancing in a whole bunch of different companies. Then I went to Mexico City and I danced with a company there for about a year. And then I moved back to Philly, and here I am dancing here and teaching dance. That's a lot of what I do now. But yeah, dance has been a primary part of pretty much my entire life. So
Yes.
You know what you're talking about, ultimately.
Yeah, trust you. Yeah, and I mean, we've seen you perform, Kat and I, and you do amazing work. Like, it's so
you.
beautiful. I get excited every time I see your pictures because you also do
Oh,
modeling.
yeah, yep. I do a lot of modeling and specifically dance modeling, I guess. But yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, such
Yes,
talent.
yes.
Most
One of our
talent.
incredibly talented friends. There are a few where we're like, yeah, they're just, they're just over there being amazing. Yeah, that's all to say we're very big fans of what you do and are very happy for you to join us. And like I said, you're not a horror fan. So what is it about horror that like gets under your skin?
Okay, well, I guess maybe more so gore. Like, horror is very broad, I feel like, and I'm starting to accept like the more suspenseful side of things and like the uncomfortable part of it. Like, I'm getting a little bit better with that. But the like straight out like violence or gore or something will literally, I have said so many times to Jeff, I feel sick. I can't do this. I can't watch it.
Yeah.
But that being said, he still puts me through it all the time. So like my tolerance levels is like starting to get up there, I feel like. So
Begrudgingly.
yeah. But I'm starting to appreciate it more, but it's definitely not my first choice. It just makes me feel so uneasy, and like I feel it in my whole body, and then it takes me a while to like come down from that and get rid of the feeling. Not that I need to feel like happy and like, oh, everything worked out great, but you know.
Yeah, especially excessive violence on screen. Like, even now, I think, like, when I was younger, I could do it, and now there are some times where I'm just watching something, and I'm like, why? Why? Why am I doing this? Why is this my job? Like, why do I do horror all the time? And even this film that we'll talk about, Climax, I honestly, like, in the second half of this film, my stomach was in knots, even though it's not gory. Like, it's not, like, over the top. But there's so like I was so stressed that the entire time I was like, I'm sick, like I feel sick, and nothing has happened.
Exactly.
We're just in a circle and we're getting dizzy, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I get that, and like horror is very expansive. Like, there's so many subgenres and ways to enjoy it that we often say, like, people who are not horror fans, it's just that they haven't found the horror that works for them, or they didn't think it was horror.
Yeah.
And we're like, actually, like, Jurassic Park is a horror movie. We're like, actually, Alien is 100% a horror movie.
Yeah.
And who says it's not? That's
Dinosaur
ridiculous.
murder or alien murder, anything that has murder associated, I think could be argued in favor of being horror.
Some things that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about to help maybe fully understand and appreciate this film, because there's a lot going on, and there's honestly a beauty to it in like the way that it was approached and some of the technical aspects that I'll like totally geek out about when we get there, because I was like, ooh, that's so great. But there's this like whole worlds that like we're not a part of. So what I wanted to ask is like, what are some of like the dance, like what kind of dance do you feel yourself kind of drawn to and that you enjoy performing the most, and like what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'd say I've grown to really like contemporary, and specifically contemporary ballet, more specifically contemporary pointe, but not necessarily like the classical sides of things, like classical ballet and also, in a sense, classical modern. Those two I never really felt like I fit into. They were always just very codified and, you know, so many rules and this, that, but contemporary is a little bit more open-ended and more space to make it your own. But throughout this movie, I was like, oh man, I hope I have enough insight, because it was so much voguing and like kind of, you know, more hip hop, more club dance styles, and like, I feel like I even saw some crumping in there at points, and I was like,
crumping.
Go off, and like, I love watching that type of stuff. But that's not my style, but I love to watch it. And especially like Vogue and like the ballroom scene and everything is really magical, I feel like. But yeah, I'm more of a contemporary gal.
Yeah. I was like reading too that the creator was really drawn to like the voguing scene, and it specifically mentions crumping, and there are some really uncomfortable just like breakdancing, the body movements.
Yeah, the whacking, and then I forget what it's called, but yes, I know the
Arms.
Yeah, when he's with his arms and he was like double jointed, so he was like, it was like almost like he was an art piece, like he was like a geometric shape that was like bodies. And I'll definitely like, I have so much feelings just about like being under the influence and dancing, because they're so rough and like fluid with their bodies, but at that time when they're just like uninhibited and they're just like moving their bodies, I was like, careful. I was like, I know your bodies can do amazing things, but I'm like so worried you're gonna break something.
I mean, definitely like
flapping around.
I mean, just in general, like alcohol plus dancer equals like crazy, ridiculous moves on the dance floor. Like, no matter what the context is, like, they're going to be ridiculous, myself included. But, like, in this movie, especially, like, I feel like, maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself, but towards the end, I was like, oh, I hear the bones cracking and the joints grinding, and I was like, oh, you're going to feel that in the morning if you're still alive.
If you've survived this actual
horrific experience.
Yes. And there's also like, so that was part of the thing I wanted to talk about too, and then I'll like leave it up for Kat to ask a question too. This always happens when we have a guest. I'm like, me. Is in this film, we're really gonna dive into drugs and like being under the influence and like that kind of cross section of dance culture, and some of like, because there's a little bit of there's not a lot of conversations that happen that are even intentional, because a lot of it is improvised. Yeah. But in the beginning, at the very least, there's very intentional conversations about drug use, about the different countries and their expectations for dancers, like
Yeah.
America versus France versus Germany.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to talk to you about what you think are some of like the real life horrors of just being a dancer in some of the dance communities in that world that you've seen or know of.
Yeah, so there was something that in the beginning, like interviews that they were doing with the cast, where the one person was like, dance is life, and like without it, I'd kill myself. And, but I feel like that character really meant it. And I feel like I know people that are similar in the sense that like we've spent our entire life training inside this bubble, and the second like it's gone from injury or just, you know, you haven't gotten those jobs that you thought you were going to get and you have to start reevaluating what might happen, it gets really depressing really quick. And a lot of people, you know, don't know how to get out of that. And some people don't have to. Some people, you know, get to live the dream and be the star and everything. But I feel like there's a lot more that have to go through that process of realizing, okay, you've been doing this from, you know, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. your entire life. And now what are you going to do? Because it's not working. You know, at some point you have to figure out a sustainable way of living. And that really resonated with me because I feel like I personally even had a moment where it's like, okay, and you feel kind of guilty. You're like, oh, am I allowed to step away from this? Like it becomes almost like a toxic relationship of like, I love it, but it's hurting me. But I love it, but there's no jobs. But they keep saying no. Oh, what do I do? And it's like a really, you have to really sit down with yourself and figure out what that's going to look like. And then on the other like aspect of more alcohol and drug abuse and such, that can definitely be a slippery slope, especially within the dance community, I'd say. You know, there are talks of like old stories and stuff. I don't know anyone personally that's doing this today, but, you know, dancers that either, you know, needed to take a shot before they went on stage or, you know, had to get that line of coke before they went on. And that's how they were such amazing performers and this and that and whatever. But could they do that and be that without those drugs? It's not very clear sometimes. But yeah, and then it's also like the partying aspect as well, because something that also made me laugh, it's like, yeah, dancers, they dance all day, rehearse all day, and then what do you do to relax? Have a party and dance. Like, of course you do. And I feel like those definitely, you know, can get more experimental on that side. And again, like, where does that draw the line, and where is that, you know, personal life versus bringing it into the workspace? And I've definitely seen some situations where that line gets blurred, and then you're putting your coworkers at risk, and you know, just trying to find that balance, I guess.
Yeah, that all makes like a lot of sense. And even just thinking of like other like performance or like physically challenging professions, like even just thinking of like professional football or wrestling or any of those, like wrestling, like that's performance, right?
Yeah.
But there are so many of those who get injured and like that's it, and that was like their whole life working for that. And it's just one, you know, misstep or like if you're the person you're supposed to be relying on has a bad day. Like I get that. And then also just like the performance aspect of like always needing to be on and being your best. It makes me think of Judy Garland when she was younger, and like how they used to have to give her like uppers as like a child in order for her to stay awake because of they didn't have the laws in place. And then they would have to like give her stuff to go to sleep and then wake her back up, and like you do that to your body for your like the significant amount of time, it stops being able to just do that naturally,
right.
Which is just horrific and scary. And like also makes me think of other dance horror films like Suspiria, which they mention, and there's even like a little Suspiria VHS tape.
I thought I saw that there. I was like, I really want to know each and every one of these. But.
Yeah, there's also like Black Swan, right? And it's just like those really we're diving into the pressures of needing to be perfect, to reserve your space there.
Yeah.
Like in being important.
Because you're very easily replaceable. Like there's always somebody willing to do the job that you can't or won't do.
Yeah, and someone is like, as you're understudy, like someone who's literally like assigned to do that if something happens to you. And I'm sure a little bit of them wants you to fail, so they get a chance.
Yeah, they get their chance.
To be the star.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kat, what about you? What questions do you have?
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think when you were describing other things that reminded me of dance, but I was also thinking like the Olympics and how like the sphere in which the Olympics exists is like you have your whole childhood and early adolescence dedicated to this one thing. So when you were saying, Allie, like about like doing this your whole life and then just being like, all right, well, one day my body is going to just not want to do all the time. You know, that's hard. I barely move now. I'm not even at all. But like, it just seems like it's like very stressful in that regards. And I guess like it was very interesting watching this movie just because there's so much emotion and stress happening. And I guess like I was curious, like just from watching, it was a very stressful movie. But did you feel like this film's representation was like accurate at all? Or did it feel kind of exaggerated or like way over the top? Or did it like relate somewhere in between for your experience or those you heard of?
I hope it's exaggerated.
Well, I don't think like everyone's just like going around spiking LSD into the punch.
No, not in that regard. But some of the like mindsets and the just fluid culture and like just you know the rapport between the dancers, that felt familiar, but the actual, like, I don't know, in, like, yeah, the drug use and the alcohol and that, like, specific, like, partying within that, I don't think I've ever experienced that. I'm sure that it's there. I'm sure it's somewhere, but, you know, it was more so always just like, let's go out and you do your own thing. You know, we're there together, but it's not spiked punch or whatever, you know, but,
Yeah.
But the way that they were talking to each other, that definitely felt familiar, and, you know, how close that they all get. I feel like you kind of feel that at the beginning where it's like, okay, you've been in this, tight knit group for so long. And, whether that's like your company, you don't necessarily have to be in this one area, but even just rehearsing day in and day out, you're gonna get so close and, you know, just start talking so comfortably, I guess. Like there's definitely things where you're like, are y'all really talking about that right now? But I feel like they probably would. So, but I also had moments of thinking like, dancers are so extra. Like, I am too, but there were moments in the partying scene, I'm like, okay, guys, like.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Because we're just like, sure, yeah, this is how it is, right? Yeah, and I think something that was interesting to me, especially in like a lot of the promotion of the materials and then like a significant chunk of this film is like the over-sexualization of like everyone and just like this like, it just makes me think of like being like the band kids in school, like, you know, they were all
thirsty.
Just with each other all the time and there were no rules. And so I'm just like, is that what it's like? Or like, is there, and I mean like it's obviously generalizing like a you know, entire group of professionals, but it just seemed like everyone was kind of like, yeah, this is the way it is.
Yeah. How to speak on that? It's definitely like it's definitely a generalization, but at the same time, I feel like dancers are so open with themselves and open with their bodies that sexualization kind of does naturally happen, whether it's from their end and their movement or it's like from the outside looking in. Dancers are generally like sexualized and whatnot. But that's also very heavily dependent on the company that you end up with. There are some companies where that is not the culture at all. I don't want people to think that that's like a given thing for every single dance company, because it's definitely not. But I've 100% heard stories of that is pretty accurate, like, yeah, everyone has slept with everyone, and, what you doing tonight? Okay, great. Like that,
Yeah.
it happens. But again, it's just completely dependent on the company, and it's not a given, but it's definitely out there.
Yeah. I definitely think, like, the role of drugs plays a big part in that, like, in exacerbating what was already kind of, like, really touchy and like that closeness.
Yeah.
Also makes me think of, like, the Olympics, right? Because they always have those tales of the Olympic Village, like, just being full of people just like, we're all hot.
Well, I also think of the fact that, like, there are a lot of choreographers that, like, nudity is part of their dance. And so then you're used to rolling around with this naked body. And so just what's one more step? It's like, but I think that also lends to the sexualization of dancers, because, again, their bodies are just being used and seen and portrayed in various different ways. But it's not uncommon to be asked, okay, you're going to do this, topless, or you're going to be making out, or, just things in that nature. It's, once you get to a certain level within your career, I don't think it's crazy uncommon to be asked of that of you.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I think I was... Okay.
No, I was just going to say, you obviously have a choice. I don't want to make it seem like you don't have a choice, but it definitely, it's asked sometimes.
And I think, like, I was kind of thankful that there wasn't this kind of hierarchy and, like, that kind of dynamic either. Like, they were all dancers. And, like, even, like, the one person who was in charge, like, she wasn't doing anything out of line.
Yeah.
And so it was, like, everyone's kind of on equal footing. So no one's, like, holding anyone's career hostage. Like, no one is, like... It's all, like, real-life stress. Like, or, like, other stressors instead of, like, do this thing because it was kind of just, like, there was a lot of uncomfortable sexual things. But something I did appreciate as it was going was just this, like, incredible, like, comfort with their bodies. Like, everyone was just so, like, everyone just loved each other and loved their bodies, and, like, they all were wearing their own thing. Like, no one looked the same. There was a variety of bodies and, like, shapes and just, like, skin tones, and, like, that was, like, so awesome. And everyone was just, like, confident, like, and comfortable, and I loved it. Like, people just walk around, like, practically nude, and it wasn't like there was a lot of talk of sex and a lot of uncomfortable talks of sex acts, but there was also just times where people were just like, we're dancing together, and that's how it is, and it's just because we're comfortable with one another, and it ain't even got to be about that. And I was like, that's so nice.
I agree. I really appreciated that aspect as well, but I don't think that variety is, like, genre wide. Like, I think that's more specific to, the styles of dance that they were portraying, because I think that's definitely still, an issue within the more classical styles. But it was really nice to see. Yeah,
because there's a lot of like, black just dancers, and if you're gonna have voguing and crumping,
it would be inappropriate.
It would be absurd to not have, like, at least half of your crew, which was, and I was also excited because it wasn't so, like, just, like, women and, like, two men, which is, like, how I often see, like, in films, or, like, here's the two dudes who, like, lift you up, and it's like, no, that's not how that works. And a variety of, like, even just, like, gender identity, sexuality was all over around the spectrum too. People being like, men, women, whatever, I'll take what I'll get. And then other people being like, I'm a virgin, but I am very gay. And then, Daddy, DJ Daddy there being like, I'm going to get married. Like, I thought that was one of the best parts of this film,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of confidence. And like, I also, what made me think of like, in terms of everyone being kind of incestuous with each other within the relationships, it did feel very much like the lifestyle of a dancer is a specific thing. So it's sometimes hard to find people who understand that, and that there can be like a camaraderie or like just an inherent trust that comes with someone else who also has experience doing something that does take a large toll on your life. Like you have to relate in a sense to understand that like it involves travel, it involves like being gone for a period of time, it involves modeling or like, you know, having your body a certain way, and that if people aren't uncomfortable with that, then that can be like a conflict that can happen. I would assume. I don't know if that's right for me to assume, but like, it seems like there's like a level of trust that was just inherent because like they all were dancers and they all did the same career, that they understood each other on a way that like it might have to be explained otherwise, which was cool. I thought that was like a nice touch.
Definitely. Yeah, and you're spot on with that, Kat. That's definitely something that not everyone outside of the dance world can handle within a relationship. But at the same time, you know, dating within one's own field could, if they were actually, you know, like seriously dating, it poses its own challenges of, you know, are you getting critique from one another? Are you on the same track? Does one progress faster than the other? It starts to get, it can be quite tumultuous, but I'm not sure they were looking for lifelong relationships there, so I don't think they have to worry about that.
Yeah, it seemed very much like we're busy and we don't have the time for the other kind of relationships. So, you know what? It's convenient. It's here. No one's really judgy or mean about it. Let's just have fun and do what we need to do.
Exactly.
Like how if you work hard a lot and you don't have time for relaxing or recreational activities, you have to do that where you can have it. And that's just what it is.
Yeah, pretty much.
They were young. They were like, we got time. We can do whatever we want. So why don't we actually hop into...
Like say what the movie is.
More things about the movie, So I will explain what the movie is. Let me do a little thing here. So CLIMAX is what we watched, which was from 2018, I think. It follows French dancers gather in a remote, empty school building to rehearse on a wintry night. The all-night celebration morphs into a hallucinatory nightmare when they learn their sangria is laced with LSD. And it is directed by Gaspar Noé, who also directed Enter the Void, which is a great film, horror film, where the main character dies in like the first 10 minutes from a drug overdose. And the whole thing takes place kind of like as their ghost, like navigating the world and kind of seeing it. And it does these amazing shots of like going through buildings, so you see like the walls, like like, you know, like the partitions between. And I was like, this is the coolest film ever. And I didn't know that until I was doing this research, and I was like, this dude is been doing this stuff. But he apparently also did a film that features an incredibly long and disgusting rape scene. So I'm very glad he didn't do that here.
Yeah.
Very lucky, especially with horror. That just kind of happens quite often. But this is a very interesting film. It does open with interviews of the dancers that we see. We get their names. And there's like so many of them. I was very surprised by how many there were, because they're asking these questions. All of a sudden there's like a new face and a new face. And I was like, I can't keep up. The only name I remembered was Psyche, who was the German, because I was like, that is like name to remember. Why is your name Psyche? But some of them had names like, oh man, like some of the dudes who did like the breakdancing had like code names too.
I want to say one of them was like Cyborg or something.
Yeah. Cyborg is the one who they didn't ask a dance question. They were like, how badly have you beaten someone up?
Yeah.
And he's like, I bashed a skull and he lost a tooth. I was like, why is this what we're learning about this person? But it has these interviews, and they're on like a little TV, and on the left side is books, and then on the right side is all these VHS tapes, like we said. So there's like Suspiria, there's one about LSD and psychology or something, and there are definitely hints at things.
Yeah.
We do start with with a woman who's like crawling, or she's like running through snow, or like kind of run walking, and she's just like covered in blood, and then she's like crawling, and it's very long. Like everything in this film is very long and drawn out. And I was just thinking when I was like, because it's a aerial shot, and I was like, there are no footprints anywhere else. So this was like had to be one shot. And you just go out there, you do this little sloppy snow angel distress time all by yourself. Like, no one else is there, you're just doing it, right? And I was like, okay, this film is going to be pretty hands-off. Like, let's see where this wild ride will take us. Which is why I picked it, because I saw the description, and I was like, I don't know what that means. And then I read the Wikipedia, and I was so confused. I was like, wait, who is this now? And wait, what's going on? Because it really is like one linear take almost. And so I was like, all right, Allie, I'm going to give you this film. You got to watch it. And then as I watched it, I was like, I need to apologize. For making you both watch this for so long.
It was a lot. It was a lot of things. It was a lot in every aspect that a lot can take place. In that, like, in a sensory level, like as a neurodivergent or individual, I couldn't even focus on the words that were happening because there was just so much sound and light and like movement. And I was like, I am overwhelmed and nothing has even happened yet. Like, what is happening? Why am I upset? There's no reason. Everyone's just happy and dancing and spinning. And I'm just like, I had to pause and rewind and reread. And I had to like pause and just read subtitles because like too much was happening for me to be able to do both. Mm-hmm. So this film was a lot. Not bad, just a lot in every aspect that a lot can be, in my opinion. That's my little rant about the film.
No, I agree. I definitely had some moments where I just needed to pause because I just needed the scream to stop for a sec. Because they were always, because someone was always, when it got to that, that kind of halfway mark, they start tripping. Yeah, I was just like, oh, my ears just need a rest.
Yeah, I was like texting Kat, and I had like this little, a note on my phone so I could take notes as things were going, because I was like, there's a lot happening, I need to write it all down. Yeah. And like that was when I was like, there's just continual screaming, and it's not always the same person. And the film, so this film is like it's one camera, and the first dance sequence is like 8 minutes long, and it's just dance. And they're doing amazing things. Every time they're like doing like the squat dance and kicking, I'm just like, my thighs hurt watching this.
Yeah, the duck walk. It takes a toll on your knees. I don't know.
I was like that. Like, it's so cool, but I was like, I'm in pain watching you. And then it's like 10 minutes of like. They're party dancing now, but there's conversations happening, and it's all one take. We're just walking around, it never cuts, and I was like, how do people know when to say their line? And like, and the thing was, they didn't, because they didn't have lines. Essentially, it is. They had a one-page outline of like, this is a gist, right? Someone spikes your sangria, and people had. It was more of like emotion in loose topic like suggestions, but it was like, I'm gonna be walking around like it was him with the camera on the, like moving around in the space, and when we get to you, like you're gonna talk about something interesting, or you're gonna say something really funny, and you're gonna have fun with each other, and then these two, like, you're gonna say something sad. And so like that was it. And so we would like walk around, people were just like dancing, and then we'd get to them, and it was such a natural way of just being like, now we're gonna talk about this thing. And it set up for later things, which I was like, whoa, it's so cool. But the whole first half is just like, you're getting to know these dancers, but then it takes a sharp turn at 47 minutes after the second dance break, when people are starting to trip, and then it's just continual screaming. But you don't always know who's screaming or why, because you're following one person, and you just have to hope that the camera comes around to the right person who's going to lead you to the people who are in distress or screaming. And so I still don't have answers for things. I'm like, why were they covered in blood? Whose blood was it? Like, and when? And who was screaming that? Like, yeah, there's a lot of that question in my notes. Like, wait.
It is wild to me that there was not a script, because some of the things that they were saying were so wild.
Yeah.
And like in areas very upsetting, like cringy and like uncomfortable.
Escalating.
Yeah. And I was that's one area where I was like very thankful there were no like rape times, because it did kind of seem like they were setting up for something like that in some of the conversations. And I was like, oh God, because you kept texting me like, oh no, oh God, why is this happening? And I was like, what's happening? And then I watched it. I was like, oh, thank God. Okay. But that's wild to me. It was unscripted. They just came up with that, like in their brains.
Which is like alarming.
Yeah.
Like, a little bit, yeah. I enjoyed that the one man made a whole argument for occupational hazards when eating butt. I just, like, why was that what he decided to talk about? I mean, good for him being sexually open, but like, what? If that's not scripted, why was that what he decided to talk about?
That's what they thought would be funny, I guess.
But like, it's just, I am shook by the fact that it was not scripted and they just were saying stuff. It's going to take me a minute to process.
Yeah, that one definitely got me too. At first I was like, okay, all right, funny, uncomfortable, funny, uncomfortable? What?
Yeah. And like, it was also like, so there's like two dudes who were talking, and it gets like, it started out a little not great. Like, they never once was their conversation was super great. Even when they got to occupational hazard, because they still like
said really
inappropriate things, but it kept getting worse. And that's where I was like, and that's only like 20 minutes in, and I was like, it's too late to cancel the film. It's too late for me to tell everyone we can't do it. So I gotta go through with this. But I was like, oh no, I really need to apologize. Like, we really need to start watching these films before we tell other people to do it.
They definitely said some things where I was like, you can't say that. You don't. You just, that's not right. Like, no.
Yeah. And like, even like David, who just wanted to have sex with everyone.
Everything and everyone.
Except for the person who wanted to have sex with him. And who was just a sweet boy. I don't remember his name, but he was the cutest.
Yeah.
The young little virgin boy.
Yeah.
Who had like the only good ending, because he just went to sleep with his pal.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the cutest thing.
I was very thankful nothing
I was very worried that something was going to go down, especially when the two guys started talking about him and and his virginity and such. I was like, you better not mess with him.
Yeah, this better not be how this film goes. Yeah. Otherwise, it is canceled, and we're going to last minute pick a new thing, and that's what's happening now.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, with it being unscripted, like, how the other actors must have felt being around each other and knowing those are some of the conversations that took place, if they weren't, like, necessarily encouraged, and, like, what part of this was them acting and the other part is just them, you know, which is interesting, because... And then you get, so essentially the premise is, they have been practicing and now they're going to relax because this is like their last day at this kind of like retreat to learn and dance together. And someone spikes the sangria and everyone's drinking it. When you know that it's spiked, you're like, who did it? Like, I was like watching and I was like, David keeps making people drink. Like, he keeps going around trying to make people drink. And I don't know if that's because he wants to sleep with everyone or he's like trying to get everyone drunk. And then there's like one person who they quickly like point at when it's revealed that it's been spiked. It doesn't drink, and it's because he's Muslim. And then there's another one who also didn't drink. So there's two characters who didn't drink, and they were...
immediately accused,
Yeah, they were accused and harmed for that. There are at least 3 deaths.
At least.
That happened by the ends. Like, that's all I can remember is, like, the 3.
The mom and the son. And there was the one that I was confused because they were laying, but it looked like they may have... thrown up, and I was like, did you survive that, or did you asphyxiate, or...
Yeah.
That was unclear.
The one who... So someone... It gets, like... It's totally, like... So there's a second dance where everyone's it's like aerial shot and they're all kind of going around. So one point where someone's like dancing while doing a handstand, and I was like, whoa. And clearly people are losing because now bodies are getting a little too like flippy floppy.
Yeah.
And I was like, your back is gonna break. And it's getting like weird, and people are like, something isn't right. If they weren't already purposely on drugs, everyone starts to feel weird. There's like a woman there who's running it all, and she has a son named Tito, and she immediately is like, oh, something's up. So she locks him away. But everyone just starts just kind of losing it, because that's what happens when you
don't get consent.
LSD, yeah, that you didn't do.
You didn't know. That's not how to enter a trip in a good way. With a sense of you've been drugged instead of I took drugs on purpose. It seems very different. I feel like you're setting people up to be like, and you're like, you don't know what people's like, what if you don't know where they are mentally, you don't know where they are like physically in terms of their health, like can they not take drugs, like they could die from them, like I have a theory about who I think did it, but I don't know if they felt bad about it, if there was actually any like mention of it. But the one that had eye acid is who I think did it.
That's Psyche.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the reason, like, so at the end they reveal that she's in the room to do an eye acid, which one of the characters in the interview, not her, was it her?
Yes, it was.
It was her.
Yes.
Who mentioned, like, I had a roommate that was taking LSD in her eyes, and I had to leave that scene. But she's doing that, but she has a book next to her that says The Psychology of LSD. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that moment, I was like, you little...
Yeah. And she started, like...
long consequences of your actions. Like, you're just continuing to do eye acid now? Like, that's not...
And there was a moment that when that happened and we saw, and I was like, oh, you totally did it. That made me laugh because there were multiple moments throughout that night where, like, you know, the one character's, like, screaming into DJ Daddy and, like, something's wrong, what's wrong? And she's just, like, in the background, like...
Yeah, she's like...
Like,
after
vibing.
she had just pissed on the floor. Like, she kicked it off, and everyone was like, something is not right, and she just walks up and just pees on the floor.
But, like, she was never, like, not okay with any of this. So, like, looking back, I'm like, I guess that makes sense. I just thought
she was, like, the most chill.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And, like, gaslighty to her friend, too.
Yes!
Sorry.
Her girlfriend, yeah. She was like... Sorry. I don't have emotions for you. Like, get over it. I don't know. Yeah, like, that happened. So, like, she just pees on the floor. There's a woman who catches on fire. And I was like...
It's not funny. Like, oh, my God.
It's not.
It was, like, after a very... like stressful situation where someone who disclaims that they are pregnant gets like assaulted, and it's like horrific, and then we move to that,
on fire.
And then straight into on fire. And we see her at the end, and she's got like her whole head was like, I was like, oh my, she just ran off, and everyone's just laughing at her.
It just kept going though. Like, you don't know if she's okay. You hear screaming, you're like, did she just die? Like, where did on fire lady go? And then like, that's
why
the whole
didn't camera follow? Camera, please track them down.
We said no. You must be in suspense.
That's not where this part is for. Yeah, there's a lot of that, like where there's things where people come in, something happens, and then they're gone. And you're like, wait.
Yeah.
There is conversation in the beginning of, I think they were a little drunk or intoxicated at that point, but there was a conversation about drugs, and I think Daddy says something like, I would be fine if it was like a safe environment. Like, I was with my boyfriend, I thought it was safe. And that was like, remembering that conversation, and like when we get to the end and everything's spiraling and it's just like chaos, it's like, one, how well do you know? Like, even though these are like the company, you don't know how everyone's going to react in this situation, and you do not have anyone who is uninhibited to protect them. And you threw out the one person who was of sane mind because he thought he did it, and it's snowing, like he's hella dead. Like, why? Like, and now we're all just messed up. alone.
Yep. There were multiple times where I thought, like, I had the moment of, like, oh, why is nobody, like, calling for help? But then I was like, right, this is, like, based off of something that happened in what, like, early 90s?
Yeah.
So, 96. Like, okay, so maybe not that. But, like, isn't there a landline? Is there nothing? Like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, like... Go ahead, Kat.
It's illegal. So I think maybe calling the authorities. France, apparently, I did some, like, minor Googling, is apparently very strict on drugs. The only ones that they're not super strict on now, based on it's like a fine instead of like jail time, is cannabis and cocaine. But everything else, very like one of the stricter narcotics laws for Europe overall.
Interesting.
So that could have been part of it.
I mean, there's a lot of scenes in which, like the one where the woman's attacked who was pregnant, where she's just screaming, like, somebody help me.
Yeah.
And there's, like, that happens a lot. There's a lot of characters who are just, like, help me right now. Or there's, like, the really problematic siblings, which maybe not on-screen rape, but definitely happens. Very problematic siblings. That made me so uncomfortable.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was so gross. And that, like, even she was, like, screaming, and there was, like, a horrific moment where you think she's gonna die, because she's, like, twitching and vomiting, and I was like, oh, no. Like, I don't know if I'd, someone help her, and for both of the things that are happening to this young girl, who's just 20 years old.
Yeah. That one definitely made me feel extremely uncomfortable, because I think I was... like, completely, like, oblivious to it at first, because there's so much going on. I was like, yeah, he's definitely a protective brother. He's being weird, but, like, whatevs, okay. And then I was,
it seemed like the less stressful situation happening until it wasn't. And
then it was one of the most. And then that scene you were talking about, Gabe, with foaming at the mouth, I was like, oh my gosh, you're not going to die right now. Please, no. But then, yeah, that was just very, and he was like, I'll help you, just don't tell Dad. I'm like,
yeah, no. What do you mean?
That shouldn't be a contingency. There shouldn't be a clause, a but to this statement.
Yeah.
It's either I help you or just you help,
Super
please.
Yeah. You got all these ladies in here. You can pick somebody else. Apparently, it's loosely based off of an event that happened in 1996, where a bunch of revelers in France unwittingly took LSD and temporarily went crazy, which is like the blanket term for whatever happened to them. But I couldn't find anything more than that. Kat did find an interesting article about the 1950s.
Okay, so y'all know I hate it here. But apparently the CIA laced baguettes in a French town with LSD. So that's a fun fact. In like the 1950s, like a whole village laced food with LSD. And it's like a thing that happened as like, I guess, an experiment, because we're the horrible worst country. I know we're not like, it's just a whole time. I read it and I was like, oh, I really don't know why. Then I literally typed into Google LSD France. That's all I put, and that's what came up. And I was like, 2 seconds, not hate here. For 2 seconds, please, can I? And it's like, nope.
Yeah, and that's
so
like...
that's a thing. I didn't read more, but that's apparently a thing that happened.
Well, that's like one of the, like, revealed conspiracies of the government and CIA is Project MK Ultra, where it's essentially this code name that was given to a program of different experiments that they were doing on human subjects, where they were testing different drugs to see if it could be like mind control or use it as like torture. There was like a whole documentary on Netflix at some point that I watched that had like this dude who was just like in this hotel, and they gave him LSD. He didn't know what it was because no one knew what it was. It wasn't a thing in the 50s and 60s. Like that wasn't something you did. So he just took this thing and was like slowly going crazy, and it led to a lot of like suicides or just people's like minds being altered. And it's just like, we just wanted to see how we can mind control people. And it's like one of those like big conspiracy theories for a long time because people just didn't believe that the government would do that. But it's like we live in 2021, we know what the government can do, and often does to people. And I think we would probably do a whole episode on something like MK Ultra because it is really like horrific. And I think that's what's like interesting about this film, because in a way, has said he didn't intend to make a horror film explicitly, but that's what it is. It's truly horrifying. There were points where I was very uncomfortable. It starts to like the filming gets really disorienting after that turn halfway through, where now it's like even the camera's like twisting around, the colors change after like the power goes out. It's just all red, everyone's baked in red. There's like really unsettling like body movements, like we were saying with the like arm, like he's double jointed, he keeps like doing weird stuff. I was like, stop, please, it's so cool, but you're freaking me out. And then at the end when they're all just like on the ground, some people are having sex, some people are just gyrating on the ground, touching themselves, and then other people are like doing the dancing, and you do hear the bones cracking and like just like and I was like, why? I want the screaming back. Screaming and just wandering down hallways and not knowing what we're gonna find, because we walk in here and this lady's covered in blood in the shower and she's like, the blood won't come off. I'm like, whose blood? And then we just walk, but she just closes the door and I was like, how dare you?
My only thought on that was like if she was consoling the character that was pregnant that got...
Yeah, because she had the blood on her.
Yeah, that was my only theory on that. But other than that, I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, like how so much? And like, I guess if you're on LSD, you don't know what time is. So if she like was helping when she was like kind of okay, and then as she's spiraling, you look down, you're covered in blood. I'm sure you'd be like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah, like why? There was one point she was even the Selva, I think, was sticking her hands in her stockings and then like forgot they wwere stockings and started to panic because of that. Like. I think it's reasonable that that's probably what happened in terms of the blood.
Because she also was in there, and it was like, at the beginning was like comforting, because it was like her body was just moving, and so it was like, stay still, and then it was like, now I can't move, and it was like, I forgot I did this on purpose. It's a lot of it. It's a very upsetting scenario that happens to a young boy. That's where I was freaking out when Kat was starting. I was like, oh no, that did not just happen. And was very upset. If you're not paying attention, you might miss it. But there's like a few blunt conversations where like, this happened to this child. And if you're looking, you can see the progression of how that happened in the background, which is interesting if it was all improvised too. It was like she was probably given like, here's the thread of what's going to happen to you. Like, you have a key, you lock the kid in, at some point later you lost the key. Where did the key go? She's looking for the key on the ground. Next thing we know, the power is out. We know what happened. Then she dies. So it's like a lot of like, I think everyone's probably given like one line of like, your character's going to go
your
from
motivation.
Here to here. You tell us how we get there. Which is just wild. And honestly, genius. I think insane. Like, I never would have... like, I saw A24, and I was like, okay. And I saw Vice, and I was like, okay. And I was like, this is a musical, but it's, like, all dance. It was dance. Yeah. Like, not so much, like, music. Like, no one's singing. In the songs, there is, like, so much repetition that really pumps up the anxiety in the songs. And there are times where there's, like, high pitch, less like, and you're like...
Yeah.
Are we all panicking? Because I'm panicking. Everyone should be panicking.
Yeah, that felt pretty spot on, though. I don't know. I just feel like I've definitely been, like, it gave me flashbacks to after a festival in Germany. The festival was hosting, like, an after party, and it didn't go very late. Like, it wasn't anything crazy, but we were only there for, like, an hour or two. But the music felt like that to me. It was just, like, constant, the same thing. But yeah, that definitely It's like almost trance-like, but at the same time, because it was so shrill in moments, you're like, ow.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like coupled with like the screaming or the weird camera angles or just the body movement. So it's just like Kat was saying in the beginning, it's like so compiled into all of these things, like is super sensory overload. So anyone who might have trouble with just too much information and needing to like compartmentalize all of that, it's you're gonna have a bad time because it's very much that. And then it's like also very upsetting situations happening, and like how do you digest all that while also being like assaulted by like every sound and visual thing that can happen. It definitely is like a don't do drugs, kids.
Yes.
It's like I've never done LSD, I never want to.
Same. That's exactly what I said.
I was like, we don't need to, though. No, it would be a bad time. I read a book in like middle school about someone who did LSD and like ripped their skin off. And that was definitely like a little much like, I don't want to do LSD then. But this seems like an actual like pretty clear, like that was like, that's a book for teenagers that's like geared towards discouraging children from doing drugs. This was like... it just seems like it was just horrifying. Like the act of doing LSD is horrifying. I don't know if that's actually true. I mean, I guess if you go into
maybe
it
if you're
knowing,
in a good place, and
like you do it on purpose
to protect you, maybe.
Yeah, like on purpose LSD that's done consensually, maybe fun time, just vibe. But I feel like the act of non-consensual LSD plus just like visceral screaming, like the people didn't have the skill, like the toolkit of things you shouldn't do while you're on LSD. Like I know at least for like mushrooms, you're not supposed to look in the mirror, and people are looking in the mirror because it messes with because your eyes are like seeing extra stuff. So if you see your face, it'll look off, and people. I've just heard that. I've never actually done mushrooms, but I've heard that from my mom. I haven't actually, but like, you know, like just so not to make my parent mad. But you're not supposed to look in the mirror. And I feel like that's something like you don't have like the toolkits of like what would create a safe space if you're not going into it knowing that's going to happen. And like the deception or betrayal of trust that you go into with is immediately going to set you up to be paranoid, angry.
Yeah, you lash
scared.
out at each other. People do that without the influence of drugs. If you're paranoid and you like think someone did something wrong, like how quickly do we like jump onto the witch hunt of things?
Yeah.
Like imagine drugs now too. Like of course people are dead.
And alcohol plus coke and plus like other things.
Yeah.
Like they weren't even going into this just LSD. Like they were being exposed to a lot of different stimuli, music, physical, other mind-altering substances, plus LSD. So, like, you're not even doing it in a safe way. I don't know what a safe way is, but especially because a lot is happening that is not facilitating that kind of environment. So
100%. Yeah, and go ask Alice that like is an anonymous diary of
that's
girls
what it
starting
was.
drugs. Yeah,
That's
she has,
what
like
I
she
read.
does acid and she
That's what it
thinks
was.
she sees bugs on her. And she like clawed at herself. I remember that scene. It was like stuck in my brain forever too. I was like, drugs are bad. Now I know. I'll never do them.
I
Those
mixed
aren't
them up.
cool.
I thought it was LSD, not acid. That's so funny. I was just like, whatever, it's a thing. Don't do it.
Sure, they're in the same family, if not incredibly similar. I know somebody who did not LSD, but acid, who was like in like they were several stories up, like in this like a hotel room or something, and they were in like a moderately safe environment. It just wasn't like their best friends; it was just people they knew, and they were just sitting there like. They were sitting there like, what if I jump off the balcony? What if I do that? And they're like, do you want to do that? Is that something you're gonna do? She's like, no, I can't do that. And it's like, okay, then why are you? But what if I do? It was like, but you're not. Like, just sit still. And they were just like, but what if I do that? Like, just don't. And they're like, okay. Just
That's
like
why you
freaking
need someone
out.
there of like sober mind to make sure you don't like hurt yourself. Like that's a very key factor that was also missing because they removed those people.
they removed
Immediately.
them, attacked them. Everyone was messed up. No one was saved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say my favorite part, though, is there's, like, a scene where people are, like, wigging, and, what was Selva was, like, the main-ish character,
Yeah.
who was, like, the kind of blonde, and she's, like, when they discover the LSD is there, and so she's, like, freaking out. She's, like, something is wrong. She's, like, grabbing onto people, and she gets to the DJ, and she's, like, grabbing him, like, you have to help us, and he's just, like, no. He's, like, he's, like, I don't need to help you. Like, he's so, like, in his own world, he was just, like, okay, hon.
Yeah.
like I'm not your savior. Like, this is not my job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You need to remember that I'm not here to serve you. And just, like, go to your side. I just love that. He was like, just go.
And he seemed
like,
to
I wanna
have a
enjoy my
decent
wig.
trip.
yeah.
Like, he was
He sounds
dancing
fun.
around in his own world, had some nice
Yeah.
hair
Like
moments.
that. Yeah. With his,
Yeah.
like, little, like, plaid skirt.
Yeah.
Digging through his, like, files. He was vibing.
Yeah.
He really had the right idea too. He was like, I'm going to everyone respect my trip. I'm going to respect your trip. Like, everyone don't look at things you don't need to be looking at. It's not going to be a good time for you. We're going to make sure everyone's okay. Like, I'm just going to go do my thing and make sure I end up okay.
Yeah.
It is not my business what all the other people are doing.
Yeah.
Unless that directly impacts me because he cared about the one kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
He was
like
I
other
care
than
about
that,
one
he was
person.
like, yeah, he was like, we're going to respect everyone's high and we're going to go do the things we need to do. Jumping on everybody and yelling, that's not going to be the thing.
Yeah, we're not going to do that, Selva.
Don't harsh my vibe.
I'm going to go back to laying down some sick, incredibly stressful beats.
Right.
And I'm going to dance all by myself. Yeah, any last thoughts about the film or about dance?
One thing I found interesting that I didn't talk about earlier is that in the interviews, they were talking about, like, the dancer's view of America and dance versus, like, the director's view of America and dance. And, like, all the dancers were like, oh, New York, that'd be great. Yes, let's go. America's wonderful. This, that, yes. And then the person that was directing was like, yeah, it'd be good to share what we have with them because they just, they don't have as wide of knowledge in the arts. So we gotta, share what we know. And that was interesting to me because I think I side more with the director a little bit because it just it reminded me that I had a friend that was from France and they told me that they have a program for artists that they basically supplement your income while you're auditioning until you get to the next job. So that you don't
That's
have
so
to take, like, the 5 extra side gigs to pay your rent,
Yeah.
and you can focus on your art
On dance.
and everything. And as soon as I heard that, I was like,
You son of a... like, America, you bitch.
Yeah.
you know,
America doesn't support any of its people,
No.
like, in terms of
art or
capitalism.
anything,
It's
yeah.
like, oh, you have a dream? Okay, but that's secondary to the factory life
Yeah.
of work till die.
yeah. And we know
you-
arts is always, like, one of the first things to get cut,
Yeah.
and it's just, but that was very interesting to me, and I just wanted to point that out. That made me chuckle a little bit.
Yeah, especially because it's those rose-colored glasses. Because, like, I think it's also that, like, to them, France symbolized, like, it being studious and being rigorous in your training, and you just work. And then, like, New York was, like, freeing.
Yeah.
Like, there was, like, this wild, like, no, there's no rules in New York. Like,
Yeah.
So I think that, especially for, like, for the sister,
Yeah.
who's 20, was just like, ooh, New York. Like,
Yeah.
I want to go because I can finally be free.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. Also, they did a great job just lighting for darker complexions. So I always like to give props for that because I think that's awesome. And like I said, different bodies and different, everyone was so powerful. It's like, I could not squat for, like, longer than, a moment. and they were like dancing and bopping her. Like, I was like, I was like, ow.
Like,
stop flopping her.
20,000 death drops and...
Yeah. Like their knees, Kat was like, their poor knees, like, and they're hitting the ground. Man, that I can't imagine recovery.
It's just like a level of joint movement that I have never experienced. I move, everything cracks, everything hurt. Like my joints just don't do. So it's very, and it's like, I have like hyperextended everything, but it still doesn't let me. Like I don't get to do anything fun with it. So I just thought it was really cool, but it was very stressful because I was like, if it was me, that would be so ouch. Yeah. Things dislocate when they hyperextend for me. Yeah. So, but like not go back where it's like fun dislocating time. It's like, no, it dislocates and then it's like that now. And now we just have to go physical therapy for 6 months, I guess. Like, so I was amazed. I was like, the powerfulness of these bodies, I can't even comprehend what mine would do in such a situation.
Class. And
no one wants to see me do that.
I do. I want to see you do
No.
it. Maybe we'll do like a safe environment class with Allie. It'll just be us two. Teach us how to move our limbs just a little bit. For people who want to hear more about what you're working on or just see your amazing modeling or hear about shows that you might be a part of, where can they find you?
Instagram would probably be best if you follow me at AMGEE92. I made my Instagram before cool Instagram names were a thing. But yeah, if you just follow me on Instagram, all my modeling work is up there and any upcoming shows I always post about. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, and you definitely should. And I'm sure when the world is a little more safe and normal, there'll be more shows and things.
Yeah, we're gonna, so the company I'm with right now, Moda Movement Collective, we're gonna be starting up rehearsals again next month. So we've been on, I guess, hiatus in a sense, taking care of ourselves in our own ways this past year, but we're gonna be starting up again in the next month, so hopefully we'll have some shows coming up soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I love that. Self-care, especially now. In the middle of the pandemic.
We tried to do virtual, but there was a moment where we all just like, we're teaching virtual, we're working virtual, we're trying to still take class for ourselves virtual. It's too much. So we were just like, let's just take care of ourselves.
Yeah,
so.
We could wait it out. Yeah, so whenever you are ready to perform again out there, we'd love to watch you. And we invite our listeners and viewers to do the same. Definitely follow you. Amazing, like, modeling. Like, I'm always just like, whoa, how does your leg do that? It's like, how'd you get it up there? But just beautiful work. So definitely check that out. And you can see occasionally little dances that you do, too. And I get excited about that as well. But thank you again so much for joining us on our horror show and being subjected to this horrifying film. You survived. We both survived. We all survived.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It was really fun. I did enjoy the journey.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Kat.
Don't get married.
Delete your kids.
They won't.